So, welcome back, everybody, to Bite Size Career Strategies. I am Nancy Siegel with Solutions for the Workplace. I focus on federal employment issues. With me today is my ongoing partner in crime, Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that you very well may run into as an employee, whether you're in the private sector or in the federal government. And that is bullying. Clients come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, Ellen, all the time to discuss what they perceive as bullying, and sometimes they call it harassment. To me, the first thing that we should talk about is what's the definition?
Yes, I agree. That is an excellent place to start today because, like you said, many clients call me. They're very frustrated, which is why they're calling and they think they want to get a new job, but they really think they have a legal case of harassment, bullying, or whatever, but they don't understand the definition or the differences. And I think it would be great to explain that first.
Okay. And bullying, at least on the federal level, is not illegal. Unlike harassment, where there are federal laws that affect everybody, bullying does not fall into that category. That being said, there are several states, but again, far from all of them, or even half, that have state laws that make workplace bullying illegal. But for the most part, it's not illegal. So I think the best place to start is harassment. What is harassment?
Well, before you give the definition, though, I'd like to point out you're making a great tip as well. Everybody listening, you need to know your state laws as well. Nancy and I are talking about a broad topic here, but it will vary state to state.
Unless you're a federal employee,
Correct.
in which case federal law prevails and the feds do not follow state laws.
That's correct. So again, excellent point. And that's why I love doing our podcast, because I bring the private side and you bring the federal side. So it's a great podcast. Okay, go ahead. Give us the definition, Nancy.
So harassment, as I said, is illegal. And it is around an EEO category: race, color, religion, gender, age, disability, national origin. I think I got them all, but I might have missed one or two. Bullying, on the other hand, is around issues that don't involve an EEO factor. And so examples of bullying could be things like screaming at people, right? Unkind remarks about people that aren't gender or racially based, gossiping, depending on the level of gossip, even using terms of endearment. I'm putting in air quotes, calling somebody baby, honey cakes, all of that kind of thing. Withholding information, spreading false information, those kinds of things are bullying. It's usually psychological rather than physical. Okay, but slamming a book down on somebody's desk, as an example, that would be physical. But again, it's not illegal harassment. It's way inappropriate behavior.
Correct.
And I think, in my experience, it is hard sometimes to determine whether or not you're just being sensitive or actually being bullied. But the statistics around this is that 75% of employees have been affected in some way by bullying. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily bullied themselves, but watching it and feeling uncomfortable. 24% of employees, and these, by the way, are private sector numbers, have been bullied personally, and about 13% were currently being bullied. So this is, in fact, a real issue.
Correct. And, that is something that I have, like I said, probably on a monthly basis, multiple clients calling for those type of scenarios that you outlaid. So those statistics are accurate in the private industry. And not only is bullying negative to productivity overall, but like you mentioned, even if you're not the one being bullied, but you're witnessing it, it just kills the culture, kills morale, satisfaction, all of that. But it really psychologically plays havoc on the person being bullied.
Well, not just them, but their family, because
Right.
we all take work home. It
Mhm.
increases sick days.
Oh,
It, it,
absolutely.
it increases healthcare costs,
Mhm.
right? And it impacts turnover.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why employers need to take it seriously. Some of the smaller companies, these privately held companies, sometimes don't even have a solid HR department. It can be very tricky in the private industry. I feel like the federal industry really has the proper HR laws, things like that to help employees, where some of the privately held companies, people really feel like they're victims because there's nobody to turn to at work.
I agree. I think on the federal side, absolutely there's HR, but like in private industry, it's hard to do things about it. Supervisors have to be willing. And the research around bullying is pretty clear that if it's tolerated at the top, it permeates the entire organization. There's actually a book, and warning here, I'm going to use language, but it's the title of the book. It's called The No Asshole Rule. And it's written by someone, a professor at Stanford University. And his thesis is, if the people at the top allow bullying, then you're not going to be able to change the culture. And in the sales business, and this was his example, oftentimes major producers are jerks. And it's tolerated because they're making so much money. And that sends a message throughout the organization.
Yes, and I would agree. And I have a 20 plus year background in sales and sales management. And I will say over the years, I have left companies due to that reason. Was even though I was a top producer, top producers around me were also bullying, harassing, and doing those type of things. And you have to make a decision. Do you want to live in that culture? Because like we said earlier, it drags into your family life, your health life, all of that. So I had to opt out, even though in some of them I was making great commission, great salary, great money. I had to make the decision to leave.
And that's a very personal decision.
Absolutely.
So I think there are 4 steps to address bullying.
Okay, great.
And, the first thing is to recognize bullying for what it is. Now, let's be clear. Everybody has a bad day, but people having bad days day after day after day, week after week, that's not a bad day. That's bullying.
Nancy, let me ask you a question. Would you recommend people who feel they're in a bullying situation, should they maybe note on their calendars or keep some type of log to see if it's a consistent thing, or how would you handle that?
Absolutely. I probably wouldn't put it on my calendar because that belongs to the organization you're working for. But I would definitely document the day, the time, the circumstances, who witnessed the behavior, and the specifics of the behavior. Now, again, I'm not talking about if somebody makes a singular snarky remark, right? That happens. I'm talking about a pattern.
And, sometimes I tell my people to kind of pay attention and track it, like I'm saying, because they will notice that if your boss is not a happy camper between 4 and 5, maybe 4 and 5 is not the time to go talk to him about something. And it's been fun to kind of coach clients like that and get the response of sometimes, yeah, I don't talk to them anymore between 4 and 5. And it's been a great relationship ever since. So again, you don't know what's going on in your boss's life sometimes. So if you notice a pattern of you trying to always get in right before the end of the day, change it up. And then maybe you might have a better relationship.
And that speaks to your own personal emotional intelligence,
That's
which is
right.
a whole different topic. But if there's a pattern of really inappropriate behaviors, start to document. So recognize it. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is hard, is speak up for yourself. Call it out. Now, don't be a jerk back. That's not the message. But you can respectfully and appropriately say, hey, what's that about? Or cut it
Mhm.
out. I don't like that. Those kinds of things, to speak up for yourself. Don't be seen as a punching bag.
Good advice.
The third thing is that I think we need to stand up for each other. If we observe the behaviors, we have to stand up for our colleagues. Now, you might not want to call the person out in public because the goal here isn't to embarrass somebody, but have a personal conversation and set the tone for your expectations. Don't let it slide, because that really is condoning the behavior. And again, the research around bullying in the workplace is quite different than the research around bullying in the school. In schools, bullying is usually directed toward the perceived weak link. In the workplace, the research is pretty clear that bullying is directed at the high performers to knock them down a peg or some
Mhm.
variation on that theme.
I agree. And I've experienced that, so I know it's true.
Yeah. So standing up for others because we're colleagues. And the last thing we need to do is to commit to next steps. And as you discussed, a next step could be going to HR. A
Mhm.
next step could be deciding, you know what, this isn't going to change. I don't want to play here anymore, and resigning.
Mhm.
And the third step is considering whether or not you want to go speak to an employment attorney.
Correct. And the key word there is employment attorney. You talking to a neighbor who's an attorney, but he specializes in real estate. Please don't trust. I mean, obviously, he's an attorney. He's giving the best advice he can, but you need somebody who will specialize in these type of things. I mean, it's like a hairline, the difference between what's legal and illegal, if you have a case or not a case. And again, attorneys get expensive, so you're going to pay for some of this up front. So you do really need to make sure you're willing to fight that battle, or is it easier just to leave?
And that is a very personal decision. And seeking a lawyer, at least in my view, I am not a lawyer. Ellen, you are not a lawyer, but that should be the very last resort, because in many cases, it's not illegal behavior. It's
Right.
just extreme jerkism,
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
that's a word.
Sometimes we don't go to attorneys because we think it's going to be some astronomical price. But honestly, if you really do love your job per se, and there's just somebody not dealing with you properly, I think it is worth a good $200 investment to go seek out an advice from attorney and just make sure you know what is legal, illegal, and things like that. Because again, maybe you're becoming hypersensitive. Maybe you could be handling different. So advice from attorney can maybe impact your strategy of how to handle things. And he might be able to also help, or she could help you wordsmith how you should address them when they are talking to you. Because again, I don't want people just to not like their job because of one person and run away. It is the last step to take action with an attorney. But I think seeking legal guidance should put your own mind at rest. I've seen that happen with my clients, and they're much happier now that they understand the laws. Because you don't want to be daydreaming that you're going to be suing somebody and that this is all going to work out in your favor when in reality it's not.
I think that's a great point. It might help you establish the right strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing an attorney is likely to ask you for is documentation.
Correct.
So if you haven't been tracking, you need to track before you pick up the phone. And the same is true for talking to HR.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to me, HR is the person or people, depending on the department, that you need to go to, which can be very difficult. And maybe, your supervisor with Nancy now, again, you have more experience in the federal government with multiple layers of management. How would you recommend, again, if you've got a supervisor, then a manager, then kind of HR, do they go up the ranks completely? Or is it more of, if it's the supervisor, you should go to the manager? If it's a supervisor and manager, then you go to HR. How would you recommend that?
So I would suggest, who's exhibiting those behaviors? How tuned in are they? Right? I would try to start with, and this can be scary and hard, but I would start with the person who's exhibiting those behaviors. Maybe no one has ever said anything to them before. And so they may be a jerk, but maybe they don't realize they're a jerk.
Right.
And that behavior has been encouraged or never stopped. So I believe we owe someone the courtesy of a conversation before taking it up the line. But again, these situations are very individualized.
Mm-hmm.
How you personally feel is very specific. I can't pretend to walk in your shoes. And at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, but you also have to recognize, as you said, Ellen, the potential consequences of all of your actions, staying silent, talking to the offender, taking it up to HR or, a supervisor, or going outside the organization. There's no perfect answer here.
But I do think the longer you let it go, it can be seen as you've accepted it. So again, nip it in the bud if it's a real bullying case and do something about it.
All right. I totally agree. So that's it for now. Thank you, Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. Again, I'm Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. Please connect with us and tune into our next Bite-Sized Career Strategies. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website for additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.